Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islamic Audiobooks collection. I will be reading When the Moon Split by Safiur R Mubarakpuri, which we downloaded from kalamullah.com. Let's read.
Page 193. Wisely, the Prophet, peace be upon him, avoided putting himself in the position of sole arbiter of the captives' fates. He asked the people of Aus, "Would you let an arbitrator from amongst you decide?" They nodded, and to their pleasure, the Prophet, peace be upon him, appointed their chief, Sa'd bin Mu'adh, judge. The wound Sa'd had received in the Battle of the Trench had left him confined to Medina. He was summoned to the Muslim camp, and as he rode up, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said to the people, "Rise up to help him." Obediently, the people rose and advanced to help Sa'd. They milled around him, clamouring, "Sa'd, treat your allies kindly." Sa'd did not reply. When the people grew insistent with their pleas, he said, "This is the time when Sa'd cares least about the reproaches of those who reproach Allah Almighty." Sa'd's words were an emphatic rejection of the people's requests. They knew then that no leniency was to be expected, and some people returned to Medina and announced the demise of the captives. When Sa'd dismounted and he was told that Banu Qurayza had declared their willingness to accept his verdict, he pronounced his judgment. The men were to be killed, the women and children to be taken captive, and the property to be divided among the Muslim community. The Prophet, peace be upon him, remarked, "The judgment you have served on them was passed by Allah Almighty in the 7 heavens. This judgment is also in accordance with the laws of the Jews. In fact, it shows more compassion than is found in Jewish law." Following Sa'd's decision, Banu Qurayza were brought to Medina. They were confined in the house of a woman of Banu Najjar, the daughter of Harith. Pits were dug in the marketplace of Medina, and the prisoners were brought in groups and beheaded in these pits. Some sources put their number at 400, while others place it between 600 and 700. Only one woman was put to death. She had thrown a handmill at Khalad bin Suwaid and killed him. Along with them, Huyay bin Akhtab, the chieftain of Banu Nadir, was also killed. He was one of those 20 chieftains of the Jews who had orchestrated the alliance between the Quraysh and Banu Ghatfan. He it was who had swayed Banu Qurayza to break their pact with the Muslims, pledging them his support and saying he was ready to share their fate. He remained with them during the siege and their subsequent surrender, and was finally put to death with them. Some individuals of Banu Qurayza had embraced Islam before the surrender and escaped punishment. The booty amounted to 1,500 swords, 300 coats of mail, 2,000 lances, 500 shields, and a large number of goods, vessels, and livestock. The Prophet, peace be upon him, then kept 1/5 of the date palms and the captives, and he divided the rest of the booty among the soldiers. The foot soldiers got 1 part, and the cavaliers received 3 parts of the whole, 1 portion for the soldier and 2 for his horse. The prisoners were sent to Najd and arms brought in lieu of them. However, the Prophet, peace be upon him, chose Rayhana bint Zayd bint Amr bin Hanafa for himself. It is said that he married her after setting her free. She died after the Prophet, peace be upon him's farewell Hajj. When the Muslims did away with Banu Qurayza, the prayer of Sa'd bin Mu'adh, the righteous servant of Allah, was answered. He lay in a tent by the Prophet, peace be upon him's mosque, so that the Prophet could visit him and inquire after his health. One day a she-goat leaped on him and caused his wound to bleed again. Sa'd succumbed to his injury. It is said that angels lifted his coffin. Abu Lubaba, who had imprisoned himself in the Prophet, peace be upon him's mosque for his hint to Banu Qurayza about their fate, had spent 6 nights tied to a pillar. His wife, would unfasten him at prayer time, and afterwards he would again tie himself to the pillar. Then a verse regarding Abu Lubaba was revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, while he was at Salama's house. Allah revealed he had forgiven Abu Lubaba. People rushed to Abu Lubaba with the good news and tried to untie him, but he refused to be unbound, saying that none but the Prophet would do it. The Prophet, peace be upon him, unfastened him when he came out to offer Fajr prayer, and events came to a close. After the Battle of Banu Qurayza, the Prophet, peace be upon him, led a number of expeditions to consolidate the peace he had won. Some of his important military excursions are described in the following section. Abu Rafi Salam bin Abu Al-Raheeq is killed. Abu Rafi was a wealthy Jewish merchant from Hijaz who had settled in Khaybar. He was instrumental in organizing the coalition against the Muslims. Once the threat of the coalition receded and the Banu Qurayza were put to the sword, it was decided that Abu Rafi was too dangerous to be left unchecked. Muslims from the Aus tribe had killed Qab bin Ashraf and eliminated a major threat against the Muslims. Their success had brought them acclaim from the community. Now the Khazraj tribe wanted the assignment to silence Abu Rafi, and 5 men from among them rose to carry out the mission in Dhul-Hijjah 5AH. Abu Rafi's fortress lay on the outskirts of Khaybar. The Khazraj men under Abdullah bin Atiq reached there at sunset. Abdullah asked his men to wait nearby and went off by himself to the fortress gate. He squatted there casually as if he were one of the inhabitants. The watchman saw him and said, "O servant of God, come back in. I need to close the gate." Abdullah needed no second invitation. He complied, and as soon as he entered, he hid himself. Late that night, he stole the keys and opened the gate to facilitate his escape. Then he headed for Abu Rafi's rooms. He took the precaution of locking from inside every door that he had opened. The darkness of the chamber and the slumber of its inhabitants gave no clue as to Abu Rafi's whereabouts. "Abu Rafi," Abdullah called out softly. "Who is out there?" Abu Rafi asked. Abdullah followed the voice and struck Abu Rafi with his sword, managing to injure but not kill him. Abu Rafi screamed in pain. Unfazed, Abdullah left the room, only to re-enter, pretending to be one of the household. Disguising his voice, he came up and inquired, "Abu Rafi, what was that noise?" "May your mother be destroyed! Someone just struck me with a sword," Abu Rafi shouted in pain and fury. Abdullah approached him and struck once more, but the blow was not fatal. He then plunged the sword into Abu Rafi's belly and left him bleeding. He opened the doors one by one and came out. The moon was out, but because of his bad vision, Abdullah missed his step and hurt his leg. His turban wound around his leg. He sat down in the shadows by the gate, waiting until cockcrow, when a man intoned from atop the wall of the fortress, "I announce the death of Abu Rafi, the merchant of Hijaz." The mission was over, and satisfied, Abdullah returned to his companions. Safe in Medina again, they reported to the Prophet, peace be upon him, who saw Abdullah's bandaged leg and ran a hand over it and healed it. It was a symbol that one more source of hurt had disappeared, and one more enemy had been vanquished. The chief of Yamama is captured. Thumama bin Uthal was the chieftain of Yamama. His hatred of Islam and the Prophet, peace be upon him, impelled him to attack on the Prophet, peace be upon him's life. Egged on by Musaylima the liar, who pretended to be a prophet and had his own reasons for wanting the Prophet, peace be upon him, dead, Thumama set out in disguise in Muharram 6 AH. His objective was to assassinate the Prophet, peace be upon him, but he was captured by a party of Muslim horsemen returning from a punitive expedition against Banu Bakr bin Galab. The Muslims under Muhammad bin Muslima took Thumama back with them to Medina, where they left him bound to a pillar in the Prophet, peace be upon him's mosque. The Prophet saw the captive and asked, "What do you expect, Thumama?" "I expect good, for if you kill me, you will kill one whose blood will be avenged. If you show me favour, you will show it to one who is gracious. If you want property, you will be given as much as you wish." The Prophet, peace be upon him, left him there. The following day, the same question was asked, with the same answer being given. The third day, at the end of the same conversation, the Prophet, peace be upon him, ordered Thumama released. Thumama, it seems, had spent the 3 days in contemplation of issues more profound than the matter of his release, for upon being freed, he bathed and asked to be admitted into Islam. Later, he said to the Prophet, peace be upon him, "I swear to Allah, O Muhammad, peace be upon him, no face on the face of the earth was more abhorrent to me than yours, but now your face is the dearest of all to me. I also swear to Allah that no religion was more hateful to me than yours in the entire world, but now it is the dearest of all to me." Thumama left Medina to perform Umrah in Mecca, where the Quraysh heaped vituperation on him for his change of heart. Thumama's answer was swift. "By Allah, not a grain of wheat will reach you from Yamama until the Prophet, peace be upon him, permits." Thumama spoke in earnest, and the Quraysh were left in despair, for not a single caravan was allowed to carry wheat to the Quraysh. A letter was sent to the Prophet, peace be upon him, asking for the embargo to be lifted, and only when he recommended selling grain to the Meccans did Thumama resume trade with them. Expedition of Banu Lihyan. In Usfan, in the heart of the Hijaz, lived Banu Lihyan, the tribe that had ambushed the 70 Muslims at Raja'i. The memory of that tragic incident filled the Prophet, peace be upon him, with the desire to punish Banu Lihyan, but he was forced to deal with several emergencies that demanded his attention. The Battle of the Trench was one among them. Soon, however, the calm following the failed coalition gave him the opportunity to claim retribution. With an army of 200 men and 20 cavaliers, he marched upon the murderous Banu Lihyan in Rabi al-Awwal 6 AH. The party reached Batn Garan, a valley between Amj and Usfan, site of the massacre. There, the Prophet, peace be upon him, prayed for the martyrs and halted for 2 days. When Banu Lihyan heard of the march against them, they took refuge in the hills and eluded capture. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, went on to Usfan with a squad of 10 cavaliers in the vanguard. They moved up to Gara al-Gumaim. After 14 days, the Muslim forces returned to Medina. In Jamad al-Awwal 6 AH, the Prophet, peace be upon him, received news of a Qurayshi caravan returning from Syria and dispatched 170 cavaliers headed by Zayd bin Haritha to Is. The caravan was led by Abul As, the husband of Zainab, one of the Prophet, peace be upon him's 4 daughters. Husband and wife had been estranged for 3 years since Zainab had migrated to Medina with her father after her husband refused to accept Islam. The Muslims rounded up the entire caravan except for Abul As, who fled to Medina and took shelter with Zainab. He asked her to intervene and to request her father for the return of the caravan's cargo. The Prophet, peace be upon him, granted Zainab's request. Abul As, known for his trading skills and his integrity, went back to Mecca, returned the goods to their rightful owners, and then embraced Islam. He then migrated to Medina, where he was reunited with Zainab. Since the verse forbidding marriage between unbelievers and Muslim women had not yet been revealed, the marriage was kept intact. The Prophet, peace be upon him, sent a number of cavalry units, Saraya, during this period. They were significant in that they quelled enemy uprisings and established peace and order in far-off areas.
Jazakallah khair for listening.